Hey you guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel if you're new, or welcome back to my channel. In this video I am doing my labor and delivery story for you guys. So I actually already filmed this, but I'm refilming it because I want to give you guys the best quality in a video that I can. And while as far as aesthetic purposes, the other video looked better in my opinion. My makeup was done, the background looked better. I just was not providing, like, as far as what I was talking about, it just was not that great. It was a crazy night. I think I was filming that video at like 11 p.m. Also, I was in the process of getting hives, I guess you can say. That night, the right side of my lip started to swell during that video. By the end of the video, it kind of looked swollen if you look closely compared to the beginning. And by like midnight that night, the whole right side of my lip was swollen. By 3 a.m. that morning, my whole lip, like top lip, was swollen. And then by 6 a.m. the following morning, I was breaking out in these welts and itching. I was gonna go to the doctor that morning, but we couldn't find one that was open. I didn't really want to go to the hospital, but I was thinking that's what I was gonna end up having to do. And I'll insert pictures too as to what I look like. I think it was 10 a.m. I finally went to bed. I did not go to bed since the previous night before. I was up during the night, just watching myself swell and constantly itching. By 6 a.m. the following morning, I called my parents. They showed up to the house to watch my son. That's why I honestly called them, because I didn't want to take him. I didn't know how long I was going to be in the hospital waiting room if I ended up going, which I'm so glad I didn't. I ended up going to a doctor later on. But anyway, I was itching, and the welts that I had hurt really bad as well. It was weird. I've never had hives before. My parents ended up leaving at 10 a.m. They're like, just get some rest. You know, the swelling isn't progressing. Like, it's, my lip by then started going down. So they're like, just go to sleep. We'll take the baby, get you some rest, and, you know, we'll see what happens when you wake up. So it was about 3 p.m. I woke up, and my lip had completely gone down, but my face, like around my eyes, started swelling. And they were pretty puffy. Again, I'll insert pictures. I had more welts on my face, like more raised welts. It looked like I had really bad acne that I was trying to pick at and stuff. I don't know. It was more like on my body. So at that point, I was like, I have to go to the doctor. I can't keep pushing it off. My husband and I are staying with family, but his side of the family from up north came in, and they were here at the perfect timing. And I was just like, I don't want anybody to see me more than what they can. So I just tried to rush out, and I was like, I have to go to the hospital. I'm probably gonna stay with my mom. See you later. I was gonna drive myself. I was also wearing a mask, and my mother-in-law was like, no, I'm gonna drive you. You're not going by yourself. So I was like, okay. So she ended up taking me. On the way, my mom sent me a link to a clinic that was open in Jackson. So I was like, well, thank God, because honestly, I felt like, especially at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, if I went to the hospital, I probably would still be in the waiting room by like 8 p.m. at night. So anyway, we go to the doctor. Luckily, I was the only patient there. The doctor sees me, and he was like, whoa, what was your routine before this all happened? So I told him, though, that I had cleaned out a closet the Thursday night, so I could have gotten into some dust mites, or if there was moisture in there, I could have potentially been sniffing mold, because it was a whole body reaction. It wasn't like, you know, just a face reaction. Like, my whole body was in welts. It was itchy. It was painful. Surprisingly painful. The doctor asked me, do I have any pets? I was like, yes, I have 3 dogs and a cat that are mine. I'm actually watching one of my in-laws' dogs as well. And the doctor's like, okay, well, sometimes pets, especially cats, can bring in stuff from outside. You know, not knowing what it was, I could have potentially touched my cat. He asked me if I was taking any medications, and I told him yes. I'm actually on some acne medication. I'm taking minocycline. Right now it's a temporary pill before I get on my main stuff, and I'm using a Retin-A micro cream. And he said that might have flared it up. And then the last thing that I told him was during my, so Friday, whenever I filmed my videos at like 1 p.m, I started filming my get ready with me, my makeup video, so I can film the rest of my videos or whatever. So that was the first video I filmed. And that day and the day before, I found and used this Glam Glow moisturizer, something like that. It was like a CBD moisturizer I'd gotten in like a previous Ipsy, I believe. I actually got 2 years ago. And I found it, and it didn't bother me at the time then. And again, that might not have been what it was, but considering it was 2 years old and I did start using it again after 2 years, that could have potentially flared something up in my body. That happened over this past weekend. That was lovely. I've never had hives before, and yeah, oh my gosh, you guys, it was so bad, as you have seen in the pictures I showed you. But anyway, I've been rambling long enough. So that being said, we're gonna get started. So I have my notes right here. I don't know if you can tell, but they are super long. So we'll go ahead and get into it. I'll do a name reveal at the end if you want to know my son's name. Well, my son's due date was September 15th of 2021. He went a week over, so we were at 41 weeks. He was born Wednesday, September 22nd. Because he was not born on his due date, September 15th, I had a doctor appointment that Friday, and they checked me out. I was not even dilated, and that was the day that we scheduled my induction to be for Monday, the 20th. As Monday rolls around, our check into the hospital is at 8 p.m. The doctor did tell us that we need to be there a little bit early, so he didn't specify when, but just before 8. It was me and my husband. We get our showers done, and we leave the house at 6:30 p.m. So we're heading to Jackson, getting ready to go to the hospital. We stop at this burger place. The doctor did say we can have something to eat. Well, I could have something to eat before we get to the hospital, just because it may be a long period of time before I can eat again, so to go ahead and fill up on what I can. So we go to this burger place, we eat. I don't even know what the place was called, but we had some burger fries. I think we had a milkshake. And then we go to the hospital. We arrived to the hospital, I think about 7:30. We finished eating. We walk in about 7:50, and we go to the counter. We check in. We have to sit back down and wait for a minute. And then there's a nurse that comes down. She calls us, and we get to the elevator. We go up. I think it was like 2 or 3 floors. And we get off the elevator, and at that point, at least for me, that's when it really started hitting me. So we're walking through the nurse's station. We're walking past those. We come upon this door where the nurse hits this big button and the door just open. And I think we went through 2 of those before we got to the initial area where our room was. So the last one that we went through, I think the sign said labor and delivery door or something like that. Anyway, so we go in there, and like shortly after we get our room, I don't remember if she brought me a hospital gown or if there was one on the bed, but when we get there, she tells me, go ahead and change it to your hospital gown. I'll give you a few minutes and then I'll be back. So I go into the bathroom, change into my hospital gown. I come out, and also in that time, so this is a span of like when we get to our room and I change it to my gown, it's maybe like 5 minutes, right? So we're in there, I'm sitting on the bed waiting. Also, by the way, this is random, but when I put on my hospital gown, the whole back was open. She told me I can only tie the top part around my neck. I wasn't allowed to tie like the other 2 or 3 ties down the back. She didn't really say why. I'm assuming it's just because eventually I'd get an epidural. I don't know. That's the only thing I could think of. But anyway, so we're sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden we hear this down the hall, this blood curdling scream from this lady, and we just keep hearing screaming and screaming, and then it's quiet. And then I didn't hear it, maybe just because my adrenaline's going. My ears are like, you ever get that way where your head just feels like super hot and like it's gonna explode? Your heartbeats in your ears pounding. Like, that's kind of how I was feeling, because in that moment I was just like, this is real, this is happening, what if that's me? Because my biggest fear, at least with getting there and then, you know, going into actual labor, I was afraid I wouldn't have time for an epidural. She clearly did not. And you could tell. And literally about two minutes of her screaming, maybe not even, my husband said he heard a baby. And when the nurses came in to start my IV, like we mentioned it to them, and one of the nurses was like, oh yeah, she came in, the baby was crowning, she literally had him not even 5 minutes after getting there. And then yeah, I don't know if it was a girl or a boy, but both the mom and the baby were happy, healthy. So I was like, oh my god, like that was pretty traumatic, especially just never having a kid before, not knowing what to expect, like never having to go through that before, and then hearing that right after you check in. It's pretty surreal. It's kind of traumatic. Not gonna lie. So the nurses were in there, right? They're ready to start my IV. I believe it was 2 of them. One of them was messing with my IV bag and the other one was trying to stick me for my IV, and I say trying to because I think we were starting in this hand. So I don't know. She said I had good veins, but they were very curvy and hard to work with. I knew it was going to be painful, but I was not expecting it to be this painful. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I hate needles. I hate being poked. You think as many times as I had to get my blood drawn while pregnant, I'd be used to it by now, but I'm still not. I had to get my blood drawn at the dermatology clinic and I was still shaking and scared. I don't know what it is, and those needles are not as big as the IV needles, I'll go ahead and say that. But anyway, so I turn my head, I close my eyes, and she starts trying to stick me. And again, it hurts so bad. And in the moment, I didn't realize that she was digging. I was just thinking, this is a very painful process. And she said she couldn't get the first vein. I think her exact term was, my vein blew. So she went looking for another vein. And again, the same thing. I don't know exactly where, but I think it was on this hand first that she was trying to look. I think it was like here, and then it was like over here the second time. And my husband said that she was doing one of these with the needle, and again, they are very thick needles. And while I did not watch, once the needle's in you and it's taped down, like if you look closely, you can see like the very edge of the needle, and it is a very fat needle. It hurt so bad. I was tearing up. I wanted to start crying. I was shaking. You guys, when I tell you it hurt, like I am a baby with pain, but when I tell you it hurt, to me, honestly, like on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like an 8.5. That's how bad it hurt for me. So then she couldn't get it. She did it like 2 or 3 times and she kept saying my veins blew. So she went out to get another nurse, and thankfully this one did it on the first try. It ended up going into my forearm, like somewhere in here. Yeah, I'm super thankful that she got that one on the first try. And honestly, looking back, I'd much rather prefer it in the arm than in the wrists, just because like the mobility, like I don't know, at least for me, I just feel like it hurts that much more when I have to move my wrist. So the other nurse that came in to do my IV got it on the first try, thank goodness. It was taped down, ready to go. So then shortly after that, another nurse came in and she checked to see if I was dilated. I was not. So she inserted this plastic strip called Cervidil, which helps to thin the cervix. It was about 9 p.m. so this all happened within a span of an hour. So the Cervidil got inserted. I had to keep it in for 12 hours. Then I don't know if it was the same nurse, but there was another nurse or 2 that came in and they strapped bands to my belly, and one band was charting my contractions and the other one was charting and watching my son's heart rate. So you can actually hear it. They put this little monitor beside me, and I was able to hear my son's heartbeat. I said heart rate, I meant heartbeat. And I was able to see it and hear it, and at one point they turned it down just because it was loud. Then shortly after they put that band and stuff on and she was telling me what it was about, I was asking, so when am I going to start feeling my contractions? Because up until this point I was fine. Like I wasn't feeling anything. The most pain and worst pain I'd had was from my IV. And the Cervidil, I will say, the Cervidil didn't hurt. It was just uncomfortable with her being down there and stuff, but it did not hurt at all. I didn't even feel it once it was put in place. Yeah, I was asking, when am I going to start feeling my contractions? Because I had not felt any yet. I didn't know when it was going to start, how bad it was going to be. And she actually told me, she was like, you've been having contractions. They're irregular, but you've been having them. So I was a little excited, I'm not going to lie, because I wanted an easy birth. I did not want pain, more pain than I had to go through. And my expectations for my labor and delivery experience was pain. Like I was expecting to go through just immense amounts of pain, and so far, other than the IV, it was a breeze. I'm not gonna lie. But after that, after I'm all set up, IV, bands, whatever else, they said just to go ahead and get some rest, whatever rest you can get. Throughout the nights, I think it was like every hour, just some random nurse would come in and check my blood pressure, check on my monitors, make sure my bands were in place correctly. Because also, I will say, the band, at least keeping up with my son's heartbeat, if I moved a certain way or if he moved around, sometimes the band wouldn't pick up. It was like a box on the band, but it wouldn't pick up his heartbeat, so they would have to come in. I guess they would get an alert. They would have to come in and fix it and adjust it. And after so long doing that, I got the hang of doing it, but it was just, it happened quite often. It was just annoying that they would constantly have to come in there and mess with something. Honestly, it was kind of hard to get rest. And during that time, again, so I hadn't eaten anything since like 7:30 that Monday night. and we're now until like the AM, like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., something like that, and I was getting thirsty. And so the nurse said the only thing I can have, at least right now, is ice chips. And she said try not to drink any water either, so as they melt down, I wasn't really supposed to drink that. I think that's just because if I did go into labor and we go to push, I'm not peeing or pooing. Like, it's not a mess. I think that's why they don't want you to eat anything while you're in labor or drink anything. Until 9 a.m. another nurse came in and took out my cervidil, and then she checked to see if I was dilated, and I was dilated at about 1 centimeter. And then shortly after that, I believe the doctor came in and told me that my contractions were more regular. They're about 3 minutes apart, and at this point we wait to see if I go into labor on my own, if I dilate more on my own. You know, we're not really going to do anything at this point. Shortly after that, I'm not exactly sure when, but a midwife came in, and I still wasn't dilated, and my contractions hadn't changed or progressed anymore. So we went in with a balloon catheter, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's like a stick with a balloon at the end. And I don't remember it hurting when it was put in place. I just remember thinking, this is uncomfortable. The thing with the balloon catheter is, after they insert it in you and they air it up, I think what I read was it was with a saline solution. After it's blown up a little bit, it'll be able to pull out when you're dilated to like a 3 or a 4. Otherwise it just sits in you, and periodically they come in and tug on it. They can't exactly tell where you're at yet, but when it comes out, you're dilated to, I think it's a 3. But that's how the balloon catheter works. The balloon catheter, when they stuck it in, it was also taped down to my leg. So at this point it's Tuesday, since I've been telling you all this. I don't know exactly what the time span, I didn't put like what time it was, but throughout the time of having the balloon catheter, I did start to feel some slight cramping. Honestly, on a scale of 1 to 10, from what I remember, it was probably like a 4. So again, not too bad, just felt like period cramps. So nurse gave me some IV medicine that helped ease the pain. It did make me feel loopy. In that time where she gave me the medicine, I think this was in the evening too. Anyway, yes, at this point it was in the evening. I do remember it was like 6 p.m. So she gave me this medicine that's supposed to kind of make me feel a little loopy. It did make me feel shaky and jittery as well. She said that was normal. It took away the pain, the little bit of pain that I was having. Again, it wasn't bad, it was just uncomfortable. She gave me half of that medication, and then she said if I'm still cramping, you know, when the medicine wears off, if I'm still cramping and feeling uncomfortable, I can have the other half of that medicine. She was the day shift nurse. So again, it was about 6 p.m. About 7 p.m. rolls around, and the medicine had wore off. I'd also taken a little nap. It was a pretty good nap from what I remember, but it had worn off, and the night shift nurse comes in. This nurse my husband did not like at all. I didn't mind her too much, but my husband just did not care for her. But she comes in, it's about 7 p.m. and I start to feel a little bit more cramping. So I asked her, can I have the other half of this medicine that the previous nurse, not even an hour ago, gave me? And she's like, no, you can't have it. And I was like, this other nurse said I could, but okay. She probably had her reasonings, but I was just going off of what the other nurse had told me I could have. Also, when that night nurse came in, told me I couldn't have the medicine, she did tell me though that my contractions were between 3 to 7 minutes apart. About an hour after that, I put that another nurse came in and started me on some Pitocin. It did start to make my contractions feel a little worse as far as cramping, but not unbearable. So at that point, I'd say my contractions felt about a 6 out of 10. So again, like tolerable, but I believe that was the worst of my contractions was when I got put on Pitocin. Now with Pitocin, I was terrified. As soon as she told me that I was going to get put on Pitocin, I got really scared, because anybody who ever told me that they were put on Pitocin while they were in labor had said that it's the worst pain ever, that your contractions are unbearable, or they get to the point to where they're unbearable. I think Pitocin in general is just supposed to speed the labor process up. It's supposed to make your contractions more intense. So then she told me that my contractions were about 8 minutes apart. They were steady. They were about 8 minutes apart, and that's when, again, like they weren't bad. Like at that point, my contractions just kind of started like getting easier. They weren't hurting really anymore. It was just super mild cramping. Sometime in that time, I started getting a sharp pain in my armpit, and when I stretched, it hurt. So I got this sharp pain. So it started here, and I'll insert a picture of when I got home because there was bruising. So I honestly think what happened is somehow I strained myself whenever, like, moving around or something. I think I strained myself. And throughout the night, on into the morning, like the pain kind of traveled. And I just said that it's like every time I'd stretch or move my arm a certain way, I'd just feel the pain like had moved. I did tell one of the nurses, and she said, well, just keep an eye on it. Felt it. She said she doesn't feel any swelling or anything, just to keep an eye on it. If it got worse, let her know. I just didn't want to burden the nurses with more than what they had to deal with. I don't know, I'm weird. But I did come to the conclusion that I probably strained it somehow. Or it also did hurt too when my blood pressure was being taken in that arm. And then at some point I got up to pee and there was blood dripping out of me. I called the nurse and she checked on the balloon catheter and was able to pull it out. I was dilated between a 3 and a 4, and she said my mucus plug had also come out as well. Which they did tell me I could pee with the balloon catheter, just try not to pee as often and be getting up and like walking around that much. You know, we're trying to let it take its course, not accidentally be ripped out. At that point, I'm not sure how long I had the balloon catheter in, maybe like 4 or 5 hours, I want to say. Quite a bit of blood. It was a little concerning amount of blood whenever I saw that was dripping and how much was in the bed when I got up. And then she came in, she checked on it, she pulled it out, she said yes, I did lose my mucus plug and I was dilated to about a 3-4-ish. So I went pee and then I was able to sit back down. And I don't know exactly when this happened, but at some point I looked down at my left arm for whatever reason and I noticed that it was swelling. And I'll insert pictures here as to what my arm looked like, but my left arm where the IV was swelling. And I called the nurse in and she said that my vein blew. And then shortly after that, I put, also due to my IV coming out of my vein, which was injecting me with Pitocin and keeping up with my contractions on the monitor, my baby's heart rate dropped. The nurse said it was due to me having contractions back to back and the monitor not picking it up because my IV fell out. I don't know if I understood that correctly. That's what I put in my notes. I did Google it. And when I did, it says, if the Pitocin is misused during labor, it puts both the baby and the mother at risk due to hyperstimulation. Hyperstimulation is when the contractions become extremely intense and come in much shorter time frames. This can cause intense pain for the mother and puts her at risk of uterine rupture, postpartum hemorrhage, and lacerations on the cervix or vagina. Because of how severe the contractions are, they may put the baby at risk of brain damage. The contractions put too much pressure on the baby and restrict blood flow to the brain. I think that's kind of what happened, and it was being misused. It wasn't going where it needed to go, but I could be wrong. So this, like, take it with what you will. I'm not a doctor or a nurse. From my understanding, when the IV fell out of my arm, it wasn't tracking, I guess, on the monitor what it was supposed to. So I guess I had some intense contractions back to back that weren't accounted for, and it put baby under some pressure and his heart rate dropped. That did happen. That I did understand. His heart rate did drop, and at that time a few nurses came running in and they told me to flip over on my left side. They gave me an oxygen mask, and I don't know what they were doing behind me, but they were messing with the machine behind me. And yeah, it was just a very intense moment. My husband was super pissed. Shortly after that, they started a new IV and I got to take a shower. Baby's fine. They started me on more Pitocin at 5:30 a.m. So I guess this was about 4:30 a.m. So this is Wednesday morning at this point. I did get to take a shower. I was so happy. I hadn't brushed my teeth or showered since Monday night, which is actually really gross. I hadn't eaten anything since Monday night. All I'd been snacking on was ice chips. I wasn't even supposed to drink the water when it melted. And I will say, because like so much is going on, you don't really so much think about hunger. Like, the hunger I was feeling was bearable, but I wasn't really thinking about it, just because again a lot's going on. They changed the blankets on my hospital bed, they gave me a new gown. I just felt so refreshed. I brushed my teeth, and then they started me on a new IV. They started me on an IV here, like exactly like right in here. Again, it took 2 nurses to get it. The first one, she tried it up in here, was not finding it. She did tell me she wasn't gonna dig. She dug a little bit, like it still hurt, but it wasn't the type of digging that I had that Monday night. So I was super grateful for that, but she couldn't get it, so she brought in another nurse. The other nurse, you know, felt around for a vein. She stuck it like right in here. She got it on the first try, which I was super happy. So all in all, I got stuck like 5 times from my IV. It really sucked. Also started me on more Pitocin that morning too. Whenever I got my new IV, they started me on more Pitocin. I put cramps got milder, not really feeling contractions at all anymore. So again, what little I was feeling wasn't bad. Then doctor came in about 8:30, checked my cervix. I was still at a 3. Then we talked about C-section, and that was probably what was gonna happen. So my camera died again. My son's playing with his little seat in the background if you hear anything. So it was about 11 a.m. A nurse came in and she said that because I hadn't ate anything in so long, it had been since Monday night, that I could have a little bit of something to eat, just as long as it's not greasy and too much. So I ended up going with like a Subway sandwich. She gave me some Sprite, and I think I had a bag of like Sunkist chips or something like that. And then I put afterwards, I still got to have Sprite, but only in small sips, and I still had my ice chips. Then shortly after that, so the midwife decided to break my water and hopefully get my labor going. She also said though that potentially with breaking my water, my contractions could get pretty intense. We'll just see, everybody's different. Mine did not. Again, after breaking my water, I didn't really feel any contractions. I put my contractions weren't bad, just slight period cramps. But at that point I was having sharp butt pains. Now with that being said, at least with my period, I've always had sharp butt pains. It's weird. Obviously being pregnant, I hadn't had a period in like 9 months. And with breastfeeding, I will say when you breastfeed, most women don't get a period. I didn't have a period while breastfeeding. So I will say when she broke my water, the thing that she broke my water with looked like a long crochet needle. I'll insert a picture if I can find one. But that was an experience. And if she broke my water, yes, it gushed out at once, but it kept coming and coming and coming. I'd move around and more would come out. Yeah, I said, and as I'm sitting here 5 minutes later, it's still gushing. It kept gushing out and I was still waiting on my contractions to get worse. I stood up. I think she changed my sheets because they had gotten soaked. I was still gushing water when I stood up. So then at that point, shortly after, we decided to go ahead and get my epidural. I had to sit on the edge of the bed with my knees up, propped up on a chair and my head down. So I was like sitting, like imagine me sitting on the bed. My knees were like this. Obviously like I have this big belly so I can't close them. And I had to look down like this, like my chin had to be touching my chest. My knees up like this. Like I can't bend down too forward because my belly is really big. And I'm sitting like this, hunched over the side of the bed with my knees up. And the guy came in. He came in with this rolly cart with all his tools on. I did not look at what he had to use for my epidural because I knew I'd be psyched out that much more. Before I even went into labor, before I even like went to the hospital, my biggest fear of giving birth was the epidural. More scared of the epidural than my contractions and more scared than my IV. I don't know why. I guess because when I think of it, I don't know if I was just misinformed, but for some reason I was always under the impression that they take a big long needle and they shove it into your back, and that just really psyched me out. Then I put this guy clean my back with soap and water and then put a plastic sheet over my back with a hole in it. He also asked how tall I was. I'm 5 feet. Then he counted down from 3 and gave me a numbing shot in the middle of my back. That did sting. It was like a wasp sting in my opinion. I've been stung in the back by a wasp ironically, so it hurt. But compared to my IV did hurt worse. So they gave me my numbing shot. Then he wiped the spot and told me that I would feel pressure. I think that was when he was feeding the tube inside my back. That all took about 3 minutes. I did feel pressure on my right side of my spine. It wasn't painful, just uncomfortable. I put a tube. I'm not exactly sure what it was. I didn't want to look at any of his instruments. But he was feeding something into my back. And I started to feel like not intense pressure, but super uncomfortable pressure on the right side of my spine. And I mentioned that to him. He said, okay. And then the pressure kind of stopped and then all was fine. Afterwards, the nurse helped me flip back onto my back and the guy started injecting my medicine into my epidural, I guess. I said it worked almost immediately, but my left side wasn't as numb, so she rolled me over to my left side because it works like gravity. I also felt a warm tingling sensation in my back after the epidural was placed and I was laying on my back. So yes, I said that I could still feel like pretty much everything on my left side, so she flipped me over to my left side for a minute. I could still kind of move my legs. I wasn't able to stand up and walk or anything, like my legs weren't that stable, but I could still move them and still scoop myself up. But as far as like pinching myself, things like that, I couldn't feel anything. My legs felt like rubber, which was honestly, it was kind of disgusting. Afterwards, I had a catheter put in. I had my epidural, so I didn't feel it. It was just pressure. And then she checked my cervix to see how dilated I was. She said it had softened and I was dilated at a 5. And then I put, as far as the epidural, I can still move my legs. I don't feel pain or the leaking. My legs feel rubbery to the touch. So the nurse came back and laid me on my side to try to get him to come down more because he was still sitting high. After so long of that and nothing really changed, the nurse inserted a monitor next to his head to help accurately track the contractions, and she also attached a tube to his head to monitor his heart rate. I was able to take the bands off. They were itchy. I think I was laying like that for maybe 20 minutes. Shortly after that, we ended up going to my hands and knees, and I just sit like that for about 45 minutes. So it was like a doggy style position, and I had to put my head down. My hands were like this. Again, I was on my knees. It was just as comfortable as I can get with this big old belly. Plus, again, I had my epidural, so while I could still move my knees and stuff, like, it just wasn't, like, they weren't all that stable. I don't know, it's weird to describe. Like, I still had kind of control, but I don't know. It was just weird. It was a weird feeling. And then his head was still a little off, so we laid me back down, this time on my right side. But baby didn't seem to like that, so we ended up switching to my left. Now we're just waiting on the doctor. So then after that, I put my contractions are getting stronger, and they're about 2 minutes apart, and I'm still leaking. Also, because it's like Wednesday afternoon, it's getting closer to time that I'm about to have my C-section. In total, even my husband, I think in total we had like 7 hours of sleep at this point in the just about 3 days we've been there. At this time that I typed this, it's 1:18 p.m. The doctor comes in at 1:38 p.m. We decide on C-section since I'm not progressing. I got wheeled to a room and had to wear a blue hospital cap. They transferred me to the surgery bed and started getting me ready for my C-section. They sterilized my belly, put monitor patches on me, and then put up the sterilized curtain. Shortly after, my husband walks in and was able to sit with me. So whenever I was in that room, it was something else, you guys. So I got laid up on this table. My arms are out like this. They didn't strap me down or anything, but I do remember, I don't know if it was so much because I was nervous and cold or cold. I think it was a mixture of both, and I guess this is normal because they literally had like a closet type room in the same room we were in. It was like a kind of closet, and they had a dryer going with some blankets, and they brought them out and laid them on my arms to warm me up. And then shortly after, my husband comes in, and he's in his little blue hospital gown or blue hospital outfit, whatever, his cap, and he's sitting there holding my hand, and we're waiting for them to cut me open, right? Then they start cutting into me. I was a little scared that I was gonna feel it because my in-law said that when she had her first C-section, I think, one of her C-sections, she felt it. They had to stop, but luckily I didn't feel it. So they start cutting, and the midwife tells me that I'm gonna feel a lot of pressure in a minute. Shortly after, I feel a lot of pressure, especially in my chest when they tried to pull him out. My husband said at one point they were suctioning his head to try to pull him out, and he told me, like, while they were doing that, I guess the suction came off, and my husband saw this big dent in my son's head because he was able to stand up and look over the curtain and watch. He actually got a couple pictures of them, of like my belly open, and then of them pulling my son out. I'm not gonna insert those, so don't worry. But yeah, my husband said at one point the suction popped off, and he said you couldn't really tell in their faces, but their hands started moving a lot faster because I guess that wasn't supposed to happen. And finally he did come out, but he wasn't crying, and my husband said he got really worried. They brought him over, I guess, to the station area, and they cleaned him up, and then he started crying. And at that point, I started crying. I figured I probably would cry, but my husband was like, I'm not gonna cry. And then he ended up, like, he wasn't bawling, but he was tearing up, and they were running down his face. I don't know if he wanted me to say that, but I did. And they started to stitch me up, and my husband got to go over there and take pictures and watch what they were doing as far as, like, with my son, I guess with the weighing and things like that. He did not get to cut the umbilical cord. I really don't know why that was. I don't know if that's just because time was of the essence and they were just trying to get him out of me, but he did not get to cut the umbilical cord. As they were stitching me up, they let my husband take my son back to our room, and he got to kind of have that bonding time with him and a little bit of skin to skin before I came back in, which honestly I think I prefer it that way. The whole process between them cutting me open, getting baby out, and stitching me up took about 45 minutes. After I was stitched up, they started pressing on my stomach, kind of pushing downward to try to get any extra blood and liquid that was inside me, kind of push it out. They did this a few more times while I was recovering after my C-section as well. That did hurt. probably like a 7 or an 8. So it was up there with my IV pain. But yeah, they just have to push out any extra liquid that may still be stuck or trapped inside your belly. They're trying to get it out. So afterwards, they did wheel me back. I was still laying in my hospital bed. They wheeled me back to the room, and I got to do skin to skin time with my son. And shortly after, we tried breastfeeding. All went well. Then shortly after, they wheeled us into the postpartum room. Maybe not even an hour later, my husband had to get all our bags, and they took me and baby to the postpartum room, or where we'd be finishing our stay in the hospital. I put lots of skin to skin time, tried breastfeeding again, and it went a lot better. Had my blood drawn yesterday on Wednesday. I also, because of my blood type, I believe it's O negative, I had to get a RhoGAM shot. It wasn't right after birth. It was probably later on that evening. The nurse came in there while we were in the postpartum room, and I got it. It was in my hip. I did also, with my placenta, I did donate it. I'm not going to post pictures of it, but the lady did text me pictures of my placenta. It's gross and neat and just amazing all at the same time. I did donate it. I had to sign some papers, and then she did have to take my blood for that. So after C-section, they recommend not eating for at least 6 hours, and they want you to pass gas. I could drink liquids and eat ice chips after surgery, but not too much at once. I didn't pass gas till later on that night, so it was probably like, I want to say 8 or 9 that I passed gas. I had my son, I didn't mention this, but I had my son at 2:30 p.m. He was 9 pounds exactly. He was a big baby. He had a head full of hair. It was about 7 that I was 7 or 8. I was able to eat something. And it was also around that time, like after I ate a little something. I don't remember what I ate, but I passed gas not that long after. At this point, it's Thursday, and this morning around 5 a.m. the nurses came in and took out my catheter and gave me pain medication. The pain medication did kind of help, but again, having a C-section, like, it is painful. It did really hurt. So that was, other than like up until I had my son, to me the worst was the IV. But afterwards, obviously the worst is the C-section. So yes, it did hurt moving around, and especially getting up, trying to use your ab muscles to get up, which you have to try to use as much as your arm and legs as you can. You're not really supposed to strain your stomach too much. But yes, it is very painful. It's doable, it's manageable. People do it all the time. My husband said that I took it like a champ, especially when we came home. And I did not end up taking all my pain medicine. I don't know, I was just weird about it. I just didn't want to. I still have some left, honestly. But anyway, they came in at about 5 a.m. Thursday morning and took out my catheter. I thought it was going to hurt worse than it did. It didn't hurt at all, to be honest. I didn't even feel them remove it. They came back later to help with baby latching correctly to see if I could pee. I couldn't pee, and he did latch better later on. So part of my breastfeeding journey, a lot of it was latching issues, and again, I'll make a video on that later. But this is still Thursday. The pain medicine was around 5 a.m. I feel like the peeing situation came around between 6 and 7. I couldn't pee then, but about 4 hours later, I was able to pee. They did tell me that if too much time goes by and I wasn't able to pee, they were gonna have to stick the catheter back in, and I did not want that to happen. I was so scared of that happening, so I was trying to get myself to pee. When I first tried to pee, I guess again because I thought it was gonna hurt, that's what kept me from peeing. And yeah, it took up until, it was about 3 or 4 hours later, I think, that I just absolutely had to pee. I couldn't hold it anymore. And so I went in there, and I'm just like, if it burns, oh well. It didn't burn, it didn't hurt at all. Some people it does burn. I think my mom said when she first peed after her C-section, epidural and all that, it burned. So I guess that's what I was going off of. And I think later on that day I was able to poo as well, TMI. And then I put the rest of the time, we just sat in there bonding with baby. I was given more pain pills throughout the days, and I was also sent home with pain pills. I didn't take them all. We were discharged Friday afternoon around 1 p.m. So we were literally there from 8 p.m. Monday night to 1 p.m. Friday. We got sent home, and yeah, like from there all was well. I will say, while I was in the hospital, I signed my baby up for his lifetime sportsman license and for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. So for Tennessee anyway, I don't know how they do it in other states, but for Tennessee, you're able to sign up for your lifetime sportsman license. But we went ahead and signed him up for his lifetime sportsman license. So he'll never have to like pay for another one again. He'll just have to update his information the older he gets. And then Dolly Parton has this awesome program called Imagination Library, and it's where kids newborn to 5 years old receive a book a month, a free book a month. You don't have to pay anything. They did, again, they had all that paperwork and stuff in the hospital that we signed it all there. I think you can get it in every state. I believe I also saw it's available in Canada and the UK. I could be wrong, but at least for Tennessee, I was able to sign him up for that, so I'm really happy. So for a name reveal, my son's name is King, K-I-N-G. That honestly is just a name my husband liked. I let him pick the name since we're having a boy. It was just a name that we just liked. I let my husband pick it out because we were having a boy. If it was a girl, I wanted to name her August. Just like the month August. I don't know, I just really love that name. He's been a really good baby. I will say my experience as far as being a new mom has been amazing. We got really lucky with him. He hardly ever cries. Honestly, from the time he was born till now, I could probably count on both hands how many times he's actually cried. I know the future, even tomorrow, could change, but he's been such a good baby. So happy. Breastfeeding was definitely a struggle, an experience on its own. Again, I'm no longer breastfeeding anymore, but I'll get into that in another video. That could definitely be super controversial, but to me, just as long as your baby's fed and healthy and at every doctor appointment is excelling and thriving, then honestly, F what everyone else says. I really don't understand why it's such a controversial thing, why there are people out there that shame mothers. Even, like, I'm not saying the ones watching this do, I'm not saying you guys do, but I just seen like some mom shaming from other moms. And just like, just as long as the baby's healthy and happy and fed and taken care of, like, it shouldn't matter. Like, just because you're able to breastfeed doesn't make you a better mom than somebody who gives their baby formula. Like, again, my baby is doing so well. At every appointment, the doctor says he's excelling, he's doing amazing. He's not overweight by any means. He's just a very long baby. He's very healthy. He's hitting his milestones like he's supposed to. He's honestly hollering right now. He does this thing where he hollers and he sticks his tongue out, and he's a character, you guys. He is so funny. He's so happy. He watches Mickey Mouse, and every time Mickey comes on and he's like, "Hey everybody," my son gets so excited. He kicks his little legs and arms. It's so cute. I don't know, I just will say, just overall, I've had a really good experience as far as being a new mother. As far as siblings for the future, I don't want to have any more, at least for me. Both me and my husband want to adopt for our next child. It probably won't be for the next 4 or 5 years. I just want to give all my time and attention to him. I just personally don't want any more. My husband is fine with that. He said he'd much rather adopt anyway. Also, just know, like, especially if you're in our boat, and whether you want more kids and you don't want it to be from you directly, you want it to adopt, or you just don't want kids at all, you don't owe anybody an explanation. You know, you do what you think's best for you and your family. I'm very blessed and grateful that we had our son, and I wouldn't want it to have gone any other way. I would absolutely do it over again to have him here with us. But for me, at least, and my husband, this is where it ends. No more from, at least from us. The next 1 or 2, however it goes, will be adopting. But anyway, I think that's all I have to say. I'm gonna go. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching this probably super long video. All my other pregnancy related videos, if you want to check those out, I'll leave them down in the description box for your pure entertainment, or if you want to click on, it's up to you. And with that being said, I'm gonna go. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.